He wanted to keep Barkimedes in for observation, in case there were any negative side effects. I nodded like this statement made complete sense. Fergus was obsessed with conspiracy theories. He spent so much time studying them that I wasn't actually sure what he did in order to make a living. The conspiracy theme website named The Truth Beneath had written that his work had something to do with a security service, but I still had yet to be enlightened as to what exactly that meant. Somehow Fergus had managed to dodge every question I'd ever asked on that front. "How's business?" Fergus asked, shoving his hands into the pockets of his jeans and looking pensively across at my flower field and polytunnels. "It's going very well, if you don't count the distinct lack of mysterious items buried on this property," I told him with a smile, knowing exactly what he was getting at with his casual question. "You never know. There's a whole field still to cultivate. Perhaps we'll find that Roman vampire next sowing season." Fergus shrugged. "You can keep your vampire. I'm just interested in the solid gold coffin." He shook his head as though I was the crazy one. I reached out and jabbed his arm. "Are you coming in for tea?" "Am I invited?" Fergus joked back. I found myself grinning as our friendship slotted back into place the way it had ever since Fergus's nasty habit of trespassing had brought us together, and our shared experiences had made us friends. "Since when has something as trivial as being invited ever mattered to you?" I jibed before ushering him into my house. Fergus let out a long, low whistle. "Phew, you've been busy since I last came round." I nodded, quietly proud of what I'd managed to achieve with the old place. If Jim Holmes's bequest had been my training wheels, they'd definitely been removed in this house. It didn't hurt that I'd sold Jim's cottage and land at a higher price than I'd bought this place for, which had allowed me to make purchases for quality's sake rather than price. The difference had come both from the work I'd already done to Jim's old cottage and the fact that the old place had been situated in a hamlet, albeit one with a dicey past. My new house was still relatively close to Merryfield, but it was out in the sticks. According to the estate agent, people didn't like being out in the middle of nowhere without any near neighbours. It would appear that I was an oddity. "Tartan? So fancy," Fergus said, stroking my relatively new upholstery. I frowned, knowing that the compliments had turned into light-hearted mockery. "It's cosy," I protested, and then went off to make the tea, not forgetting to put out a plate of biscuits. I'd kept a few unopened packets in the cupboard in case of an unexpected visitor. Truly, I knew I'd had Fergus in mind. According to him, tea wasn't tea without a decent biscuit selection. I liked to imagine that Fergus wouldn't be my only visitor, but I knew he was the only one who seemed able to spare the time and effort, and the only one who thought it was acceptable to just turn up out of the blue. My best friend Heather was busy with her B&B business, and I didn't blame her for not finding a spare moment to chit-chat. The remainder of my other old school friends no longer had much in common with me. They commuted to the city every day, as I had once done myself. Beyond the past, I'd discovered we had nothing to share with one another. Finally, there were my parents. My mum had come round when I deemed the property suitable for showing to family, and my father and his new wife had visited too. Since then, Mum had gone off on a 6-month cruise, as was her custom whenever she could afford it, and my dad was simply scatterbrained enough that he'd probably forgotten how long it had been since we'd last seen one another. I knew I wasn't blameless either. Days and weeks had turned into months without me realising, and I was certain that anyone sane would advise me to slow down a little when it came to the business. The problem was, it was something that I loved to do. Why would I ever want to slow down? "Here's your tea," I said, walking out of the kitchen a couple of minutes later. Fergus had installed himself on the tartan sofa he'd critiqued, and Diggory had curled up next to him with his head in Fergus's lap. "He's not allowed on the sofa," I informed my visitor. I actually had reservations about whether or not Fergus should be allowed on there. Both dog and man turned and looked at me with puppy-dog eyes. I dumped the tea and biscuits on the coffee table and threw my hands up in defeat. What was a little extra dog hair to clean in the grand scheme of things? "So, have you managed to find any evidence to support one of your theories yet?" I asked, knowing I was baiting Fergus, but still feeling annoyed about the tartan comment. "The evidence is all around us. You just have to know how and where to look," my visitor replied with an air of